This is Doug again. We're going to do a continuation of our book review of the book entitled I Caught You with Guile, 2 Corinthians 12:16. Those are Paul's actual words. I caught you with deceit. And the subtitle is A Layman's Commentary of the Apostleship of Saul of Tarsus, the False Apostle, by Anthony M. Hughes, who's an attorney in Texas. We will begin at page 104 of this part 3. I just want to review for those who haven't seen part 1 and 2 who this gentleman is in brief. Okay, in part 1, I introduced you to the groundbreaking book and asking tough questions about a Christianity hooked to Paul. And we showed you can purchase this book from Amazon for $24.99 or at Kindle from Kindle services, $7.99. He is currently an attorney in Texas. This is his bar license. I checked out. He's in good standing, and he practices in San Antonio, Texas. And in the first episode of this, you'll get a full review of his autobiography or his author summary at Amazon. And we did in the first part, we did his preface. We read you his preface. And in the second part, we started reading chapter 6, Were We Warned, beginning at page 100 of the book. That would be part 2. And now we're beginning part 3, which will pick up at page 104. Okay, so here we are, page 104, Satan or Satan. Earlier, I discussed Paul's spiritual conversion on his way to Damascus. Throughout this thesis, I continually hammered this point home because if Christians did not believe that Paul met Jesus on that lonely road to Damascus, everything he said afterward would lose credibility. No one would argue that the credibility of Paul is based on his supernatural meeting with Jesus near Damascus. Children are taught that point relentlessly in Sunday school. However, ask yourself, how do we really know he met Jesus? Answer, because Paul said so. We know he met Christ through Paul's testimony, no one else's. Moreover, Scripture has been clear for centuries that the testimony of one man is not enough to validate its veracity. Note the following passages. The first is from God and the second from Jesus. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Deuteronomy 19, verse 15. In your law, it is written that the testimony of 2 people is true. John 8, verse 17. Paul is not the only man who has claimed to see Jesus. Many throughout history have claimed to have seen Christ. For instance, would it surprise you that Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormon religion, also allegedly met Jesus through a pillar of light exactly over his head? Many do not believe Joseph Smith's revelation, but millions do. Today, the Mormons are one of the largest Christian denominations in the world. Regardless of what one thinks of Joseph Smith's revelation, and this is in regards to Paul's revelation that the light of Jesus was of such intense brightness it blinded him. If the light was so bright, why didn't any of his companions get blinded like Paul? Though Paul has provided 3 recollections of his conversion, he maintained in the first 2 accounts that a bright light blinded him and that Jesus spoke to him through that light. For the sake of argument, let us assume that the light was real and that Paul was blinded. Could that light have been from someone else? Could that light be from Satan, the master deceiver? The prophet Isaiah described Satan as the morning star, the son of the dawn, Isaiah 14:12. Satan's name in Hebrew is Lucifer, and in the Hebrew language, Lucifer means shining one or morning star. Understanding this aspect of Satan begs the question, did Paul see the blinding light of Lucifer on his way to Damascus? The Bible does not speak much of Lucifer, but it speaks of him in terms worthy of remembering when it does. Ezekiel describes him as, quote, the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Ezekiel 28:12. Moreover, perhaps Paul let the cat out of the bag when he said, quote, Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians 11:14. Does Satan masquerade as an angel of light? This aspect of Satan should not be lost on those desiring an understanding of Scripture. Moreover, Satan was not a lightweight. Satan was incredibly powerful. Satan speaks of the sons of God in Genesis. Enoch describes them in detail in the book of Enoch. However, of these sons of God, Lucifer at one time was held in the highest esteem by God. Here in its entirety is what Ezekiel wrote about Lucifer. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. Carnelian, chrysolite, emerald, topaz, onyx, and jasper, lapis, lazuli, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold, and on the day you were created they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You are on the holy mountain of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and expelled you, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. Ezekiel 28, verse 12 to 17. Ezekiel describes a very capable supernatural being. Paul, though he struck unimaginable fear in those he persecuted, was no match for Lucifer. Lucifer was more than a match for him. He set his sights on an easily corruptible man, a man known for his zealous, relentless persecution of Jews and Christians. Lucifer found the man he wanted in the time he wanted. He needed a man to corrupt the blossoming religion of Jesus in its infancy. Who better than Paul, a man known for fanaticism in arresting and killing Christians? The early chapters of Acts show how Christianity would have been practiced under Peter. It would have been markedly different, with believers selling their possessions and dividing proceeds with those in need. Believers were worshiping together and sharing meals with great joy and thankfulness, just like Jesus wanted. Acts 2, verses 44 to 47. In Peter's church, no man was in need because the community believers helped and looked out for one another. They provided for everyone. Lucifer could have none of that. Lucifer could not have a world where the newly formed Christian church was built on true love and unselfishness towards their fellow man. Scripture has recorded how Lucifer went out of his way to tempt those anointed by God. He tempted Job and failed. It also shows how he tempted Jesus and failed. He went after Peter too, but with the help of Jesus, he was pushed back and failed there as well. Matthew 16, verse 23. However, Paul was an easy target. Paul's history of hatred toward Jews is well documented. Pharisee Paul was willing to persecute the Jews, and Lucifer provided a hygienic, yet more permanent method. Instead of wasting physical energy in seizing and murdering Jewish followers of the way, Lucifer provided an avenue to infiltrate the followers of Jesus through their most vulnerable access point, the mind. Like the wolf in sheep's clothing Jesus warned his disciples about, Lucifer employed Paul as an apostle of Jesus and placed him in a position where he could infiltrate the ranks and files of those responsible for carrying on the work of Christ. Never mind that Paul never met Jesus or had any interactions with him. Lucifer understood the gullibility of Jesus' sheep and knew how to usurp their leadership. Today, Christians do not question Paul's assertion that Jesus made him an apostle. The only proof needed is Paul's words. Why is Paul's word accepted as accurate? Because, as I've indicated earlier, Paul told them he was not lying. Romans 9, verse 1. Of course, the true disciples did not believe him. We have proof of that in the book of Bishop Ambrose in his commentary in the book of Corinthians, and that's his commentary specifically on 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 2. But I digress. But Lucifer anticipated that. He would not allow those taught at the feet of Jesus to stop him. Moreover, just like God gave Lucifer permission to test Job, that's in Job 1, verse 12, Scripture suggests he permitted Lucifer to test the chosen of Jesus. I draw this conclusion because God could have stopped Lucifer if he desired. However, Scripture provides illustrations of how God tests his people. I'm going to pause there. Yes, he's catching this very key point. Why is Paul even in the scriptures as we read today? Because that's a test. They were not supposed to be there, but our predecessors, our ancestors, who we call the Roman Catholic Church, who, when we became Protestants, we were told Luther said they're the Antichrist, right? If we believe that they're Antichrist, do we think they're really preserving scripture? This is the irony of ironies. All these dates, if you go to Protestant church, you ask them, when was this these canons made up? They were all made in the late 300s. 363, 64, 390. These are the dates these canons are solidified. See, so it's just so questionable why we fell for that. But God uses this as a test of us, and that's a good point. So here's going to give you examples of other tests. Examples are Eve and the tree of knowledge. That's a test. Genesis 3, verses 1 to 7. Abraham and his son Isaac. Genesis 22, 1 to 12. Who uses saying. That's another test. And Judah, after his dalliance with the Tamar, Genesis 38, verses 1 to 26, another test from God. Lucifer would pave the way for Paul to introduce Lucifer's Christianity to the Gentiles. Mind you, after the death of Jesus, they were not called Christians. They were called the followers of the way. In Antioch, they were first called Christians, Acts 11, verse 26. All right, that'll be the end of page 106. We'll pick up with episode part 4 of the review of I Caught You with Guile. Okay, ciao, bye.